So it's another race week, and that's back-to-back race weeks, which is good if you're a Formula One fan, because really, is it a weekend if there's no Formula One? Not for me, not for her for sure. And if you are one of those people who's watching this, well, it's a British race, it's the British Grand Prix week, and Silverstone, one of those tracks which, should be told, has been really, is got accorded iconic status, one of the really oldest tracks that you have. And this time around, I think it's going to be a very key race, because as we were talking, even off camera, there's a number of teams bringing upgrades. But before we get into that discussion, let's get the most obvious one out of the way. Who's the favorite to win the race?
Yeah, Max.
There we go. That out of the way. Now let's get to the teams who are actually competing for something. Scraps. Let's first start with Ferrari, because again, Ferrari, I think, were the most improved team in Austria. They did really well. They were probably the second best car on race pace, and it does look like those upgrades, at least at that particular circuit, weren't eating into their tires, which has probably been a major issue for them. So I think they would be really happy, especially when you consider the fact that last year around, it was actually Carlos Sainz who had won the British Grand Prix. So who knows? Maybe a repeat. I don't know, but I think they'd be. You'd think they'd be strong favorites to be competing right at the top.
Yeah, but that's not happening, is it? But also, when we talk about Silverstone, there's just this image, this video that just plays like a flashback of, I don't know, but Lewis bursting his tire, the tire puncture on the last lap.
2020,
The chaos just plays in your mind. Right?
Every single
Max
time.
yelling at the team for making him pit. Someone saying you were driving like grannies. Something or the other that's going on. Silverstone is somehow always chaotic. It's either rain. There has to be a tire puncture on the last lap,
or sometimes guys coming in to interrupt the race.
Lewis
that also happens.
Winning the race with 3 tires.
If we're talking iconic Hamilton moments, I just have 3 words for you. Through goes Hamilton. Last year, last year, you had Perez and Leclerc, and then these dudes are fighting, and then oh my god! And you know what's really going to be good? This time you're going to have a crazy loud fan base as well. Don't forget, it's not just Lewis they'll be cheering. There's 3 British drivers on the grid.
Lando and George Russell.
Exactly. So you're going to see
Mercedes drivers that are British now.
Exactly. And when you consider the fact that Mercedes, like pretty much every F1 team is based out of England, it's as close to a home race as is possible. Really, when you think about it.
Yes, that's true.
So I think, but again, speaking of Mercedes, we were talking about teams bringing upgrades. They're one of those 2. And I think the second part of the major upgrade which we saw come in Spain, it's going to be breaking covers this week. So again, I think a very key time for them as well, because they made some gains, undoubtedly. Aston Martin caught them, and now they'd be thinking, okay, this might just be the one major other upgrade which could potentially boost them up the order. So again, key race for them, even with keeping aside the fact that, well, home sentiment is going to be favoring them.
Yeah, that's true. But F1 is one of those sports where, fan support doesn't really have an impact on your performance.
True.
Because it's just so, detached from the crowd, from the fans, that it just doesn't really play a part in either being a failure or a success.
True.
It doesn't play a part. But when we're talking about upgrades, so 3 teams are bringing in major upgrades.
Correct.
We know about Mercedes. They brought one at Spain, and they are doing pretty well. Aston Martin, of course, is bringing in other upgrades. They were doing it leg by leg. Remember that they were bringing in those upgrades in packages. One package after the other. Similarly, McLaren will also be bringing in an upgrade. So there's a lot to look forward to when we talk about it. Because McLaren in the last race, Austria. Before that,
they actually brought in the upgrades in Austria, and Lando ended up finishing 4th.
Yeah. So that was because he ended 5.
He ended 5th, and then of all the penalties, the penalty chaos, he ended up getting P4.
But we've seen McLaren being successful after the upgrades. We've seen Aston Martin be successful after the upgrades, and Mercedes as well.
Exactly.
So Red Bull at this point, see, Max's Red Bull is untouchable, but Perez is
very touchable.
Yeah, very touchable.
Let's put it that way. He's just that one driver who, despite having the best car on the grid, just unable to replicate the kind of performances that Verstappen has been having. And I think he's being shown up a bit. Obviously, we've talked about his seat being in danger as well. Multiple videos, as older ones,
and
where
now Danny will be
Oh yes, yes. How can we
He'll
forget?
be testing at Silverstone.
Yes, Daniel Ricciardo is going to be testing at Silverstone. And in fact, the Silverstone test, by the way, very important, not just for Ricciardo, but because the teams are going to be testing out the new grade of tires. So it's doubly important when you take into account that, obviously these new tires, you remember
tires
18.
in Silverstone.
Ooh, yeah. At least this time there'll be all 4 of them.
Yeah.
That's a bonus. And others. But yeah, I think, there's that also to look forward to, because obviously if you're going to be looking at the test, you're going to be looking at the practice, because Ricciardo will in fact be driving for the team in one of the free practice sessions as well. And remember, this is not a sprint race week, so you're going to have 3 practice sessions. That also something worth looking out for. Obviously, it's one of those juicy subplots. But from the race perspective, again, Silverstone is one of those tracks where you do get overtakes. So now that you've seen, say, the top 2, 3, 4, and actually keeping McLaren in mind, top 5 teams bunched together. Top 5, sorry, the 2nd to 5th. Because obviously Red Bull are kind of racing themselves right now.
One of the Red Bulls?
Yeah, one of the Red Bulls is just racing himself at this point. He's just bored. But the others, they kind of, the development, and I think that's one of the other advantages of the cost cap, wherein you're seeing limited development. So the development that comes, it just has to stick. You note for a fact that it's well researched. It's being phased out and planned out in such a way, and now you're seeing the field is really bunched up. So I think you're going to see a really good race.
I do think so as well, and I think I'm expecting a lot from Aston Martin in particular, because we've been talking about it, and we did a video on it as well, where we talk about what kind of upgrades Aston Martin are bringing in. You can go ahead and check that out as well. It's on our page, but I have high hopes from Aston Martin, because they've been getting their strategies right.
Yes.
They've been, these upgrades have been hugely successful for Aston Martin. If we look at the kind of progress they've made from the beginning of the tournament, it's been very good.
Yeah.
Right? And McLaren is always exciting to see, because
always.
they've got, young drivers. It's always exciting to see, and Lando has incredible potential to be at least on the podium in every single race. But then the car has to, back him up. But then, right now, when we're talking about the midfield clash, it's going to be really exciting, because Aston Martin,
Mercedes, McLaren, the 2nd Red Bull, who, despite having no upgrades, is still somehow getting beaten by these cars.
I think it's just Max who's kind of,
No, but if Max is able to do it, then it shows you that the potential is there. It's really showing up Perez. It's really showing up Perez.
But look at it, right? Lewis Hamilton, like swell of a driver, right? When he had that Mercedes,
he made his.
It was clear that it was a car, because Valtteri Bottas was also landing in P2, right? But it's not happening with the Red Bull. So I think it's just purely Max Verstappen who's doing that to the car.
But you just backed up my point also. With Bottas, even though I didn't rate him that highly as a driver, more often than not, he was there to finish either 2nd or 3rd, or B, to pick up the pieces at a time if, say, strategy went wrong for Lewis, or Lewis got, crashed, or got eliminated or had to retire from a race. Bottas, even in his career, has double-digit number of wins, which is impressive. So it showed that he at least had something. With Perez, I'm not seeing that. So if you have a car that's this far ahead, then you should be dominating.
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's not the car.
It's the driver. It's the driver.
It's the driver.
Exactly that. So, I mean, who knows?
Well be.
And it could very well be changing.
But then, so Silverstone, let's sum it up. Daniel Ricciardo's testing. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner are very excited about that, because they'll be quite closely assessing Daniel Ricciardo's performance. And from what I've seen from the testing so far, I believe Horner or Marko, someone from the
Red Bull camp,
someone from the Red Bull camp rated Daniel Ricciardo very highly.
Oh, it wasn't the test, you're right, it was the simulation. And that was Horner.
They said something along the lines of that Danny is looking very aggressive, and that he's found his groove and he's back into what he used to be and all of that. So they're very looking forward to, having Danny as the test driver.
Correct.
But then also we could be seeing, I don't know, Danny come in place of Checo next year.
If not Checo, then definitely maybe in place of Nick de Vries. Could very well be a possibility.
So testing, Mercedes upgrade,
Aston upgrade,
McLaren upgrade. And then the midfield fight.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about it, the midfield fight, not just the midfield, but even the bottom teams. So, who would you consider the bottom 4 teams? You'd have Williams, Alfa Romeo, Alpha Tauri, and who would be the 4th team? Yes, Haas. With Haas, they seem to have inherited the problems of Ferrari.
Yeah.
Fast over a lap, but in the race, those tires get eaten into. Alfa Romeo are consistent, but they don't seem to have that outright pace advantage at times, which means they kind of get lost in the shuffle. Alpha Tauri also, I mean, Yuki Tsunoda has probably been driving the paint off that car more often than not. So they also have kind of peaks and troughs. Similar really with Williams. And Williams, I think, are the one team that fluctuate the most because, I mean, and it also is very dependent on how Albon does. But even that has been really fun to watch. Yeah. Which is, when is the last time you could say that the last 4 or the battle between the bottom 4 teams was this good? Exactly, you can't. There is no time you can think of.
I think maybe 2021 or maybe 2019.
2021 was more about Verstappen and Lewis and everyone else.
19 was the time. 19. Lewis was
zooming through everyone else. Yeah.
And then, the rest of the fight was really good. Yeah. Especially the mid and the back because of what else is left.
Yeah, for me though, this is probably one of the closest ones I recall in a long time.
Yeah.
So, because I don't remember there being these many subplots. Normally speaking, the bottom teams would more often than not be the bottom teams. You knew they'd be coming into every race and struggling here. Circuit dependent, one of those teams seems to be able to find themselves in point scoring position, which is really good, and probably is a bit of an indication that maybe those regulations are actually working out in some ways that was intended. But exciting race coming up because, as we pointed out, so many things, and Silverstone really is one of those tracks that, truth be told, does facilitate good overtakes. So I'm excited. How excited are you guys? Well, you can let us know in the comments. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, tap the bell icon. Also, don't forget to download
the AajTak app.
Follow us across socials as well. Right now though, from Gargi and me, it's goodbye.